Hello, bonsai friends. This is Evan Pardue of Underhill Bonsai, and welcome to episode 42 of Little Things for Bonsai People, the podcast. And this time I am joined by Mike Lane of Kitsune Bonsai. How's it going, Mike?
Hey man, how's it going, guys?
All right, all right. And today we are joined by a special guest. He's actually in a different time zone in a different day in Japan. I'd like to welcome Seth Nelson onto the podcast. How's it going?
Doing good, man. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, definitely. We're going to talk to Seth today about his bonsai apprenticeship and life in Japan and day-to-day work at a professional bonsai nursery, and just what's going on over there. I mean, it's a different world. So, but before we get too far into that, I do need to mention that our podcast is sponsored by our amazing patrons over on patreon.com/littlethingsforbonsaipeople.com. And if you head over there, you can become a Bonsai Best Bud and hang out on the Discord with all these amazing people, starting off the list with Tori Solis, Vicky Auth, Warehouse Rat, Boyd Snellgrove, Ricky Ruins, Joshua Bentley, Snappy Snappy Chappers, Ryan
Chappers,
Chapelers. Yeah, I know who Snappy Chappers is. I've just been saying this whole time and I realized who it was. But anyway, I'll get to that later. Ryan Giordano, Joel Jenkins, Justin Knight, Backyard Bonsai Australia, Green Witch Gardens, Taylor Peacock, Chase Pertweet, Austin Atkins, Karen Codswell, Unryuin. Unryuin?
Yeah, I think it's Unryuin.
Unryuin. See, yeah. There was actually a discussion in the Discord that everybody was going to make really weird like handles and names for me to pronounce, and they're getting good. This is actually just the name of the bonsai garden, but Luis Torres, AC Castle, and Bonsai Marine, thank you guys so much for being patrons and supporting the show. If you can't support the show financially, it's always good to share, subscribe, like, follow. Everything counts. Everything helps us out on your favorite listening platform. Just go over there and click follow or subscribe. And then can't go much further without mentioning our editor, Matt O'Donnell. He makes us sound smart. He cleans up our audio, makes it enjoyable to listen to. So go over to mattodonnell.com to fill out a contact form and start your own podcast show with him or get some audio engineering done. He's a set bassist over in Nashville, Tennessee, and he's just an all-around awesome guy. So how is it going over there currently in Japan, Seth?
Well, it is a little bit past 10 p.m. right now. Got a typhoon kind of rolling by. Told you guys that before we started recording, but didn't really make a direct landfall here in Nagoya, so we're good, and I'm good. Just normal night.
What is your prep? I mean, I know what we do at the nursery at Weigert's, but what do you do for a typhoon? Anything? Just put the trees down?
So like we tie down most of our trees. Like 90% of the trees are tied here, and like the smaller trees, we just kind of push them in on the benches so they're kind of huddled together. And yeah, we put some trees down on the ground too. And like a couple small trees come inside just like if it's convenient. But like, yeah, there's only one tree that we really are worried about protecting. There's a 130-year-old ume here. That's like it's from the first generation of Aichien. So that tree, like we had to move it inside of the tea room here, just because like, that if anything happens, that's like the most troubling tree to lose.
Yeah.
If it was lost, it'd be like really heartbreaking.
That has the most history to the nursery.
Yeah, it's from the original, like the first seedlings that were planted by the first generation. And it's like verifiably more than 130 years old and documented, So that's like the prize tree here, sentimentally.
Yeah, give us some information about exactly which bonsai nursery you're at and who you're studying under.
So my Oyakata is Junichiro Tanaka. He is the fourth generation professional here at Aichien Bonsai in Nagoya, Japan. Nagoya is about like halfway between Tokyo and Osaka, just for, relative location. So Aichien is I already said it's fourth generation bonsai nursery. So, my like at this great grandfather started the nursery back in 1890 something. And yeah, I mean, it's just been passed down from generation to generation. And like we're here on the fourth generation now.
That's crazy. That's wow. Wow. So what is it like what is like your daily routine? Like what is it like basically walk us through kind of your what a typical day in the nursery would be like?
Well, I mean, so I wake up about like 7 o'clock. So I live at the garden. I don't have an apartment. I don't leave and come back. Like I don't come to work every day. I live at work. So I wake up to breakfast call about 7 o'clock every morning. I go eat breakfast, with my Waikato, his kids, and the other apprentice that's here. Then, by 8 o'clock, we are in the workshop working. Like I have to kind of make coffee. Now that I have a younger apprentice, I don't really have to do too much morning stuff. But like my first 3 years, I had some morning tasks that I had to do. Like I'd feed the 3 dogs that were here and clean the poop and stuff like that. And just like, and also get the workshop ready for the day. But really like that's just like sweeping if there's a mess, something like that. But, start to work at 8, we eat lunch at 12, get an hour break, and generally work till about 6. And then after 6, we eat dinner generally about like 6:30, somewhere between like 6:30, 7. So yeah, like every meal I have here is also with the family, like breakfast, lunch, and dinner. So then after dinner, it's kind of my own free time. So I can come back to the workshop and work on my own trees, or I can just hang out in my room and, chill. But yeah, I mean, you get what you put in as an apprentice. So, like when I got work to do, I try and get it done at night. But like rest is always important too.
Mm-hmm.
You gotta find a balance, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And like sorry.
No,
Go ahead.
no. There's a passing thought that I don't want to forget. I've heard Aichian maybe referred to as like a tree building nursery. Are there different types? I've heard several people kind of refer to there being like different types of nurseries in Japan.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard for me to say like these days because what I'm seeing now is there's a lot less specialization in Japan, and like a lot of people have just become tree brokers, like just moving trees quickly. So for example, like Aichen is not a garden where we focus on just like buying trees, wiring them, and then selling them as like a kind of like revolving, getting them in and out of the nursery as quick as possible. So like we will buy trees that, when I say we, I mean like my way I got them will buy trees and they need like, I don't know, say like 10 years of work, 30 years of work, whatever, as long as it's a tree with a really good potential that's worth that effort. He's gonna buy that tree and spend the time to make it. So when people say like we're a tree making nursery, I think that's what they mean currently. But I mean, some nurseries like they only focus on deciduous or shimpaku, or some people are kind of famous for grafting and those kind of things. So I don't really know because like I'm only experiencing what I experience here, and I don't really want to say like, oh, this is how it is here in Japan without like actually experiencing it,
Right. Interesting. Evan, you got anything for him? Like,
of course, we got plenty.
nice.
So as far as day to day, how often you guys hand water everything? And that's something for the listeners. They wouldn't know otherwise.
So we have, I don't know, well over 2,000 trees here. We hand water everything every day. So like winter time, I mean, we water according to the weather, right? So in the winter when it's like, it's freezing here and that kind of thing, maybe we water once every 2 to 3 days, or maybe once every 3 to 4 days. It just depends on how the trees are drying out in winter. But then, like, come spring, it does get pretty warm here, and we're gonna start watering 2 times a day. And like now in summer in Nagoya, I mean, we have daytime temperatures up in like close to 100 degrees Fahrenheit. So we're watering 3 times a day, and like generally, the way we water, if it's 2 people watering, it'll still take maybe an hour and a half.
Yeah.
So if it's only me watering, like, yeah, it can be like 2 to 3 hours each time I have to water. But it seems to be kind of rare that like I'm watering by myself these days.
And how are you guys determining when to water? Do you guys like just check the soil, scrape down the soil and look at it?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, we just observe, right? Like we're like, you can't see now, but like I'm sitting in the workshop and like I can see the trees from just where I'm sitting. And like if something's kind of starting to wilt, you kind of just can see it from here. And then, we go out and we check. And if the soil is starting to dry out, then, we just water everything. We don't really kind of spot water. Like we don't specifically skip, like I guess we kind of do, but like we water everything. When we water everything equally. We don't like kind of hold off on some trees. Yeah, because it's hot here. Like our soil mix is the same for every tree, so everything kind of dries about the same, more or less.
And we'll get back to the watering thing because it's actually it was one of our listener questions from our Discord. But you mentioned soil mix, and that has always been really intriguing to me. So what do you guys run at that nursery in particular?
Okay, so we have like the soil mixes we all use. The soil mixes we use, it's all the same ingredients, but we just kind of mix them in different proportions. So the base is akadama, river sand, pumice, and like a little bit of charcoal.
Interesting.
So the river sand we use is probably just like a crushed granite that's been like sieved and graded, I'm not exactly sure on like what exactly it is, but like just call it river sand. So for pines, pretty much all pines like to be more dry. So we're going to use like something like 8 parts river sand to 1 bag of akadama and like half a bag of pumice. And we'll kind of mix that to just like however much we need at the time. So that mix is drier and like pines like it. So like if it's shinpaku or like hinoki cypress, other conifers that are not pines, the mix has like maybe half as much sand and the same amount of akadama. So it's like a little bit more wet. And then like for deciduous, like there's no sand in the mix, or maybe just a little bit of sand in the mix. And then it's just like instead of using a larger size pumice, we use like a smaller particle size for the pumice with the deciduous trees. And for shohin, like we follow the same mixtures, except we're using smaller particle size.
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, it's the same ratios, just size down.
Now, so that's
go ahead.
Oh, sorry, Evan. So that sounds like basically instead of like changing your watering habits, you're amending the soil so they can all have the same thing.
Yeah, basically, because I mean, with such a large number of trees, to really water with individual treatment is like pretty difficult, right? Like it's hard to give a tree exactly what it needs if like, you have 2,000 trees to water and if it takes you 3 hours to water, it's like, by the time you're done watering, you're going to have to go back and water again.
You're absolutely right.
So you have to kind of find a, what do you call it? You have to find like a middle ground, right? So you change the soil so that everything's kind of on the same page for what it needs.
At Weigert's, that's exactly what you're saying is he uses a very coarse mix for everything, but he checks religiously daily. Yeah. And so there's a guy that's there all day. His only job is to water trees, and he basically waters everything and then finishes and starts again and checks everything.
Well,
And
I mean, that's bonsai, right?
yeah, it's bonsai, there's
awesome.
yeah. So it's kind of, it's interesting to see that there's like these different approaches, and it's like, where do you want to put your work? Where do you want to like put the time? And so I personally, I tend to like sift the soil according to my needs, and that I water just everything similarly. But I have always been a big believer. I've seen the results of kind of checking water and stuff like that. So I think watering's, just something very there's a lot to it. A lot to watering, I think.
So my oyakata has always said like the hardest part of bonsai is watering, learning how to water appropriately, because like it sounds superficial, but like it is like the core of bonsai is like watering. If your tree is weak, it's not because it needs fertilizer, it's because the watering is like the main issue, right? And if you want to get a tree healthy, like of course fertilizer is going to help, but like watering appropriately is what's going to make the tree strong and healthy again. Most every problem you have with bonsai comes back to watering at like the core issue of it.
And it was one of our listeners is asking about how to gauge your watering techniques as time goes on. And I know that's like we're going kind of back and forth on this, kind of just water as you need or keep your eye on things. And Mike's saying the coarse mix down in Weigerts, they're just constantly cycling through the whole collection, just watering. And so I know it's hard to pinpoint like a guideline or some hints and tips on how to water, but I do like how you say that like the core of it is watering, because from me the approach is the root system's numero uno in the bonsai. I mean, if your root system's poor, in poor health, then obviously the whole tree is going to be poorly healthy.
Yeah.
And then just the water is that main component, it's the fuel. So I think maybe one of the things too, if this sounds right, is like root core saturation. It's like if your actual root core, like your sheen, is starting to completely dry out, then you'll run into even more issues. So
that's something we deal with at the nursery a lot.
So my experience, like my work experience prior to coming to Japan to study bonsai, I worked in a retail flower nursery for like 3 years, and we were propagating and growing everything ourselves. It wasn't just like, kind of like a Home Depot operation. So like, when you water any kind of potted plant, you have to fully saturate the root ball every single time you water. So if the core of your tree is completely dry, then I mean, I say like, of course you have to like fully saturate it again, but like maybe some people don't know that, right? But I mean, every single time you water, you need to be putting enough water to the tree that the soil is fully saturated. And like sometimes that means you water, you let the water absorb, and then you hit it again like once or twice. So you end up watering the same tree like 2 or 3 times, just like maybe over the course of a minute, so that like the water has fully saturated all the soil in the pot. I mean, that's the general approach to all potted plants, I think.
Yeah, we've had it get hydrophobic, like where the core won't take the water anymore, and you could sit there for. I mean, I've run a hose on some of those big trees. I've just let it sit and come back and scrape down under a couple inches, and it's still dry. And like I know with small trees, I just soak them in a bucket. But like what we do in the nursery at Weigerts is we just wait till summer comes and we wait till the rains come, and it fixes the problem eventually. But I know that that's not the best solution. There's got to be something better.
Especially
I mean, if you're hitting that problem, then you kind of know that you need to repot that tree and address the core of the tree. If it's not taking water, then it's likely not your watering habit, more as like the tree needs to be repot and the core of the tree needs to get worked so that it can take water more like easily.
Right.
That's my feeling. When we tend
to run into that though is usually around winter time. And for us it's a poor time to go digging in there. But that's like it seems to happen because we start watching water more carefully, we start watering less, and then it always happens, every year where the stuff dries down to a point where it's too far, and then it's like you can't get it wet again, you know. So I didn't know if there was some secret hidden technique that you learned to.
No, I mean, I can't say that we actually have that problem
You
here
guys
at
use a
ICHN.
wetter mix and keep it more evenly moist, right?
Yeah, to be honest, we water a lot, I feel like. And probably because of that, we just don't see our trees like run into that issue.
Right.
And like I was saying, like if we are seeing some kind of health issue related to like a tree not taking up water or something like that, like, I mean, it's because the tree needs to be repot. And I think like, I know with tropicals in wintertime, it's more risky and dangerous, and like you don't want to go in there making hard cuts on the roots. But I think you can open up the root ball gently if you like need to address it to save the tree. But then like you also have to give it the aftercare to make it through winter after doing that.
Right. Yeah.
Whatever like that aftercare looks like.
So on that kind of same topic, I guess I'm kind of curious, what are some of the, there's so much to ask. Like I know you grew bonsai in Florida and you grew bonsai, now you're growing bonsai in Japan. So like how prevalent are tropicals? How prevalent, like do you use any of the information you previously learned, or is it basically like clean slate, you're learning everything new?
So there are tropicals in Japan, especially like more like Okinawa, which is like almost like an island off of the main island of Japan, right? Like very far south. And they grow a lot of ficus, sea hibiscus, whatever else is down there. Here, like I do see, like we have 2 bougainvilleas here in the nursery, and I've seen bougainvilleas at almost every bonsai exhibition. I've seen some ficus that were imported from Taiwan that were like, pretty thick and big trees. But I think there's not a whole lot of tropicals here just because like, for the most part, Japan's a cold country and you're kind of just like going to be fighting to keep them alive more often than like enjoying the way they grow, I think.
Right.
But like my impression of like developing tropicals and developing, say, like deciduous trees or broadleaf evergreens, I think honestly it's about the same. Like the same way we cut ficus is generally like the same way you're going to cut a kaide. Like momiji is a little bit different. Like it has its own kind of way to treat it. But like just in general, I think like if you treat tropicals as if they were just a deciduous species or whatever, like it's about the same. So yeah, I don't know if that answered the question.
Yeah, no, that does. That's exactly what I kind of wanted to know.
Yeah, it gives us insight into the different regions because we do talk to a handful of different people from around the world. So, and I know some people have totally different experiences with species or preferred species in their range. So that kind of leads me to, I heard you mention a species that I'm not familiar with. Was it Masiji?
Momiji, that's
Momiji.
Yeah, that's
Momiji, yeah. Yeah. Sorry.
Okay, so that's just the actual Japanese pronunciation for it.
Yeah, my bad.
No, it's okay.
Like I'm not saying, sometimes I will use just like the Japanese name because it's what I use every day here, right? So I'm used to saying it. So like if I say something and you need me to clarify, just like go ahead and ask. Like, I'm not actually like trying to be pretentious or anything.
No, that's actually a good question though. Leading up to that is, I mean, I don't know if it's offensive to ask, what is the language barrier like with you and your Oyakata?
So he speaks fluent English, completely. Yeah. Like
that helps a lot, I'm sure.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the reasons why I came to ICHN, like other than like his skill level and wanting to study with him specifically. But I already knew that he was accepting of foreign apprentices and was like interested in other cultures. So his general attitude is a lot more approachable than a lot of other Japanese bonsai professionals. And he's like more approachable as a person, and I think more accepting of foreign apprentices in like foreign culture and all that sort of thing. So yeah, I mean,
isn't he blasting like hip hop and stuff all the time?
Yeah, dude, he loves Skrillex.
Yeah.
but yeah, no, we'll be riding around in the big van listening to like old school hip hop all the time.
That's awesome.
So yeah,
very interesting.
I'd say though, like it's my so I asked him before, like, should I study Japanese and learn the language? And he told me, like, yeah, you don't need to learn Japanese to learn bonsai. But like I feel like I approached it with the wrong mindset from the beginning because I knew I would leave Japan. I don't want to like live here. So I felt like I didn't want to learn the language. And then if I leave the nursery, like, yeah, I can't communicate at all. Like I know some basic phrases I can survive and like communicate with body language and like the phrases that I do know. But yeah, outside of the garden, the language barrier is just like, I don't know. It's like you can't interact with anyone. Like very, very few people in Nagoya speak English, and the ones that do are generally like pretty shy to speak it. Like Japanese in general are like very timid, I think.
It's interesting. So you've been to some other nurseries as well, traveling around and seeing some things. What's probably the most impressive thing you've seen there? What's like the coolest technique, or like what's the thing that kind of blew you away?
Oh,
that's a broad question.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, like it is pretty broad. Like I've seen one guy who's like, he's not really a professional, but he's like he's a very rich like hobbyist that has really great trees, and he enjoys doing the work himself. And I've seen him like grafting and changing the leaf varieties of like, I don't know, like 20 different Japanese maples in one room. And he's got like 20 or 30 grafts going on each tree. Seen like that, and I thought that's like, yeah, really high level deciduous work. So I took a lot of pictures and paid attention to what he was doing.
I was kind of hinting at was I remember kind of seeing that, and one of the things that blew me away was just the pre-thought, the plan that goes into that, and the efficiency of growing. If you need to thicken your lowest branch, you run that up and then graft it somewhere else and grow another branch. Right. And it's very efficient, and it's beautiful. It's like a beautiful math.
I don't think there's any reason that kind of work isn't happening in the US like commonly, because like he has the time. He's retired and he's like wealthy, so he doesn't have to worry about going to work every day or anything like that. But he's not a professional. He's just like a dedicated hobbyist. And there's a lot of dedicated hobbyists in the US that like could easily do that work if they like were educated on like the technique and just, put in the effort or work with a professional or something,
For sure.
That just
go ahead. Yeah, like at the same time, like I've been to other like nurseries that had been grafting like shimpaku and tosha, like needle juniper. And for me, I'm very interested in like technical work,
right?
Because like, yeah, like I'm trying to learn technique more than anything here in Japan, right? So when I see like some kind of high level technical work being done, that's like really what grabs my attention, even if it's not like some crazy like $500,000 tree or something like that. As long as like the work is like really good, I don't know, I pay attention. It's hard to answer because like I don't go to nurseries to like observe, it's more like I'm just kind of tagging along with my oyakata as he's like got some kind of business to attend to somewhere, or like he's on a shopping trip, something like that. And I'm just kind of poking around, seeing what I can pick up just like by observing what's happening, just looking around, But when I said I'm not like there observing the Yeah, I mean, like I'm not there observing the work that's being
Right.
done
You're
as
doing
it's
other
happening.
stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
These are all in passing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's all in passing.
And that's what I've heard with Bonsai Apprentices, especially hanging out with Carmen over at Michael Hagedorn's. It's more of the immersion that you're looking for.
Yeah.
I mean, just being around bonsai every single waking hour, and then you have your work at the nursery and you're watering, but yeah, that's the immersion, I'm sure.
Well, yeah, and here, like I said, like I live here. I'm sitting in the workshop right now. So like yeah, it's full immersion here at Aichi, and I don't think there's many other nurseries in Japan that have like on-site apprentices. Um, I know like there's another nursery called Daijuan, which is where my way got to study, and they currently have a guy from Australia. His name's Sean Hartley. He's also like a on-site apprentice, the same way that I am. But outside of Aichian and Daijuan, I don't know like how many other nurseries are even doing on-site apprenticeships anymore. And both of these gardens are foreign apprentices. There's no Japanese apprentice doing it, which is like
That's odd.
so it's called like Uchi Deshi. Like Uchi is inside, Deshi is apprentice. So it's pretty much like the most traditional way to study bonsai, yet there's no Japanese that I'm aware of. Like I'm sure there are, I just don't know exactly.
And isn't that, I've heard like numerous reasons why that is, that they just, the younger generation doesn't have an interest in it, that there isn't as many young people. What's your take on it?
I would agree with both of those statements. And I would say, like, it's a very stressful relationship for both sides, like for your oyakata and for the apprentice, because, like, there's no separation between living and work. So, like, your personal life and work are completely tied together. And, like, yeah, if my oyakata runs out of cigarettes and it's like 10 p.m., he'll send me a text like, hey, go buy me cigarettes. And I have to go out to the store, go get him cigarettes. So like, it's not something that like everybody wants to do, right? Like it is just something like it's good, but it has its drawback. I guess that's like the best way to say it, right?
Right. Yeah. It's not all fun and games.
No, the romantic view of being a bonsai apprentice like that dries up pretty quick.
Yeah. So what continues to be your like motivation? How do you continue? I know it's hard, and so what keeps you going?
So like my oyakata, he's a nice guy. It's not like I'm living in fear, like I'm not.
No, I don't mean like that, but
well, there's been some articles published and that sort of thing. So
there's been stories.
That's not the experience I'm having at all. And like, yeah, the work is hard, but like, dude, I worked at Pizza Hut. Like that's hard too. And like, I don't want to do that. So like, I'm pretty content. Like I'm doing what I love to do and I'm doing it all day, every day. And, I've got a place to live. And like, when I wake up, like I walk through the bonsai garden every morning to, go have my breakfast. So like, it's pretty cool. You just gotta accept the lifestyle and get on with it, and then other than that too, I do have like goals after I finish my apprenticeship about like, starting my own business and becoming a professional in America. So like that keeps me going too, right?
Yeah. And are you going to, have you given any thought? Are you going to continue growing more Japanese species or like more northern species, or are you going to come back and grow tropicals, or do you have any like that yet?
I have I will be honest, like I think it'd be really hard to just like completely abandon the idea of working with Japanese trees. But also just like working with American Yamadori is like, that's very appealing. And I feel like that's a huge opportunity for the skill set that I've learned here in Japan that like I have to kind of pick up on that when I go back to the States. And I don't feel like I've lost my like interest in tropical bonsai at all. I would just say, like, to me, it's like any tree I see. It's not like I'm saying like, oh, this is a deciduous, I don't like it, or this is tropical, I don't like it. I'm looking at the actual tree and like, oh, do I like it or do I not like it?
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of how I decide like if I want to work with it or not. Because yeah, I mean, a good tree is a good tree, like whatever species it is.
Mhm.
I guess one thing I heard you, I know you just recently did another podcast, and one thing I heard you talk about that is something I firmly believe in, and I think that's due to both you and Juan's kind of teachings, and that has to do with like Aichian's appreciation of age on
Yeah.
trees. What's your take on that? Like, give us your, I know, and you don't have to like say exactly what you said on there, but like I guess a lot of people are so quick to rush to the aesthetic in bonsai and like just
Mm-hmm.
make a cool tree fast. And after really giving it a lot of thought and a lot of studying and whatnot, it's become more apparent that really like the design, everything, all like kind of fall away to age. So age is like most important, and your design doesn't seem to matter if it doesn't contribute to the age of that tree.
Um, I think like of course like design matters like on just like for the aesthetic, right? And then like what I see here in Japan, because like there's a lot of trees that are more than 100 years old or like 60 years old, something like that, that have been neglected and have declined a lot. So you still have like 100 years of age into this like tree that needs to be redesigned. So I feel like as long as a tree is alive, you can do whatever you want with it. And then like you can apply techniques to remake it and whatever, but you can't do anything to get the age. Like age only comes with time, right? So age is like, in my mind, it is one of the most valuable aspects of bonsai because it's something like there's no way to like make it happen faster, right? So yeah, I don't know if that's like fully what you're asking.
Yeah, I think that was. Just wanted you to kind of dive into the age concept in bonsai a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, here in Japan, like when you say a tree is old, it's not that it looks old. It like it really is old. I think that's something I know, like from my experience in Florida prior to Japan. A lot of people talk about, like, oh, you bring the branches down and it makes the tree look older. But like when you've been around truly old bonsai, and then you see a tree that's just been like, wired down, it doesn't look older at all. It just looks like the branches have been wired down.
Mm-hmm.
Like an old bonsai looks like an old bonsai because it's old. So that's kind of my take on it, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I like that because that's all just design.
Yeah.
An ascending branch can be old and covered in old, nice plated bark or
Yeah.
clearly more mature bark that matches the actual tree. Yeah, just that generic pine tree style doesn't just work. I know what you're saying. Yeah, like, and that's something that we don't see a whole lot here in the States, unfortunately, right now. But we're getting there. But yeah, that's a great point.
Yeah. Like, I mean, bonsai outside of Japan is just, it's not as old as Japanese bonsai. So as time goes on, as long as the trees continue to survive, they will get that like true age. Like the one of the concepts is mochikomi, and like mochikomi is a feeling of age. That's like when you see like the twig has bark all the way up to the tip of it, and like that twig is just like super old or whatever. It's like this. It's just this feeling that this tree has been bonsai for a very long time. And you don't have a lot of that just because like bonsai outside of Japan is not old enough to have developed that feeling yet. That's my impression.
Yeah, I've heard numerous things. One of the most interesting things that like a big change in how I perceive trees was when Juan came to the nursery at Weigert's, and there was a large Brazilian rain tree there, like a really old one. All the wounds healed, everything, beautiful tree, and it had big reverse taper, like right above the Nabari, but it wasn't caused by like any kind of poor growing. It was just like a rain tree, and
Yeah.
he commented on it. He said, this is a nice tree. And I said, yeah, it's really nice, except for the reverse taper. And he just kind of like nodded his head and he was just like, nah, it doesn't bother me. And
Yeah, I mean, I feel it completely the same way, right?
yeah. And so that was a big eye-opening moment.
So I think like if a lot of people do like this idea about rules in bonsai, and like I think a lot of people like that idea because they like to say there are no rules and like kind of fight the system,
Mm-hmm.
But like, yeah, reverse taper can happen. So like if a tree has reverse taper, like does it make it not a good tree just because it has reverse taper? Like if it's a good tree and it has like some kind of weird feature, that just makes it unique.
Right.
Like here at IGN, that's something that like my Oekata kind of looks for. Not specifically like reverse taper, but just something weird about a tree. Like if it has like a strange knob growing on it or something like that, and it's really old, like, yeah, that means it's kind of one of a kind, So I think like when you change your mindset about like appreciating the age of a tree, despite like, the quote unquote flaws of a tree, then you can really appreciate more bonsai.
Yeah, I agree with that.
My observation from that point too is that if there is a flaw like that, like we were just saying earlier with the mochikome, that flaw took time to occur in that bonsai. And so you can give merit to that flaw. Either it's a big awkward wound or a big bulbous branch or inverse taper or weird movement in a branch that just no one bothered to ever cut out of it and they just kind of went with it. Like you're saying.
Sorry. I was just gonna say, generally, like those kind of flaws, like those are not things that were forced into the tree, right? Like that's a natural phenomena.
Right.
So yeah, you just kind of change your mindset a little bit and you can appreciate it for what it really is.
And that I really enjoy that. You said something too not too long ago. We were looking at an elm, a really nice elm, and I zoomed in real close to it, and I'm like, whoa, but what about these like cluster of branches here, And your answer was, well, what do you do about it? Do you cut it off?
Yeah.
And you basically that flaw should have been fixed. If you were gonna fix it, should have been fixed way long time ago. And if it wasn't, then you respect the age of the tree. Is that kind of a yeah?
I generally agree with that to an extent, right? Like there's always like special cases where like you do want to fix something like that, and of course like there's special cases where you can appreciate it for like being so old,
Right.
So I don't know, I hate giving like a black and white answer on anything. So.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, you're right. Like if it's really old and it's like perceived as a flaw, but it's really old, it's like, okay, like you're gonna devalue the tree and take out like the interesting aspect that it has going for it just because like you read a rule or like someone told you there's a rule about making a bonsai. And I think that's kind of dumb.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true.
Well,
lot to think about.
Yeah.
There's a thing in the mustard seed garden manual that kind of says that's it's an old quote, I think, in the ABS literature that basically like once you master any art, a master should be devoid of form but be with form, one of those kind of yin and yang sayings. But
yeah, that's deep.
yeah. So very cool.
Yeah.
So yeah, what do you got something for him, Evan?
Oh no, I was gonna bring us to our sidebar conversation for a moment. If you we can pick up right after that if you don't mind, Mike.
Yeah, no worries.
Yeah, dude. because I feel like we missed an opportunity to talk about it earlier in the show, but sidebar segment of the show is for just things not bonsai related or bonsai adjacent. But I think I would like to take this sidebar opportunity to congratulate Mike.
Ooh, thank you, man.
Yeah, we forgot to mention it earlier. We got ahead of ourselves talking about bonsai, but so tell us about what's happening with you and your wife Lisa.
So soon to be wife, but we just announced that we are having a lovely baby girl, Amelia Lane. So we're absolutely ecstatic about that. So she's due in February, and I'll be teaching her bonsai as soon as she's here. So
You're gonna have the tools and like a seedling with wire on it as soon as she comes out, and you're like,
I'm gonna have a papoose and then put a pair of scissors in her hand too, and we'll just work trees together.
There you go. Just expose her as soon as possible.
As soon as I mean, there's gonna be a bonsai in the delivery room.
She's gonna be your protege. I get it.
So we're really excited though. That's it's just the coolest thing that's happened ever. So
yeah, dude, it's gonna be pretty cool to see like a little Mike. Oh, I've been messaging you about it recently, right?
Yeah. But nobody knows the true story. So here's how this kind of happened. Was last year, Lisa.
Wait a
exactly.
second.
No,
Wait a
second. We're not gonna go into that. Lisa had a dream last year. We weren't gonna have kids. We were kind of had talked about it. We were cool with not having kids. And last year, Lisa had a dream, and it was like a really vivid dream. She woke up and she like it was so important to her. She came and told me. She's like, "Look, I had this dream that we had this baby girl named Amelia, and it was amazing. I really think we should rethink our view on having kids." And so we thought about it and we decided, let's go ahead and try to have a kid. And nothing happened. And so we kind of lost sight of that. And next thing you know, out of nowhere, we find out that she's pregnant, and next thing you know, we do the test and it's a girl. And so we had to go with the name Amelia. So now it's all lining up. She's going to be our little dream girl. Yeah.
There you go.
So that's wild, man.
Yeah. They say that when you want a kid, it doesn't really come to you, but when you're not expecting it, that's usually when it happens. I've heard a lot of people say that.
It was just so funny. I would have never guessed. I would have never guessed in a million years. So it's awesome.
Well, yeah. But yeah, thank you. Everybody in the Discord, go over there and jump in there and say congratulations to Mike. It's a big deal. This is a life-changing moment.
It is.
That's wild.
Yeah. So
thank you guys. I appreciate that.
Yeah, definitely. So as far as, did you have a follow-up question, more stuff for Seth?
No. I mean, I honestly, I'll think of a million things as soon as we get off the phone. Feel like I've stored up so many things to ask him once I get him like sat down in a chair. But right now I feel like I've got a lot to think about, a lot to mull over,
a lot to process. And we do have opportunities for revisits and future episodes with our guests and stuff too.
I hope so. Yeah.
So
as long as you have me, I'll be good to talk whenever.
Dude, that would be cool. Yeah, we would like to have you come back.
And as far as the bonsai word of the week, we had talked about that a little bit earlier. And I was making sure I had the pronunciation close enough. Since Seth, your Japanese should be a little bit better than mine. But our bonsai word of the week is netsugi. And that refers to would you have the more proper pronunciation? I always go.
I think you're saying it about right. I mean, we kind of chat a little bit about this. Like ne is like it's the word for root. So like I don't exactly know what like sugi means, but I know like the term for grafting is sugihi. So like that root su, like you have net sugi and sugihi. It's the same root. So I mean, you put two and two together, like root graft net sugi. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, I guess like you're right on the money with pronunciation.
And usually, whenever I approach Japanese terminology and words, The way that we have it here in the States is that we'll get the actual readout of what the word is. Like we'll get the phonetics of it spot on. And one of the biggest things, if listeners are trying to learn these bonsai words of the week, which I challenge our listeners to use them in a sentence amongst their bonsai friends and outside of a bonsai group and confuse people, is to know that in Western culture we have a rhythm to the way we speak. There's pauses and dips and inflection in the way that we speak. Within Japanese culture and their language, there's usually no pause or stops in a word. So you say netsugi, that's the Western way to say it, but for them it would be netsugi, just quicker and just more precise on the nose kind of sounding. So just a little bit of a thing that, I mean, everybody's got Rosetta Stone too, so that's like Japanese 101.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, netsugi is the is a grafted root. I wanted to bring up grafted roots because I think that's something, as far as grafting goes, we had talked about this earlier in the episode. You talked about the guy grafting the Japanese maples. That's just something that I feel like a lot more bonsai enthusiasts should get on board with here with grafting.
Yes.
And grafting roots. I have a friend that I work with, and she grafts all of her trees. She root grafts every single tree that has any flaw in the roots, and it's awesome. She always turns out really, really great bonsai every time. Not every single time, but got great roots, great root systems. I mean, and you get a really nice even flare. You get Nabari all the way around. You can actually bring the root ball up closer to the trunk instead of having stringy aqua roots on one side. So what do you think, Seth, as far as your experiences with root grafts and that type of thing?
I mean, in my opinion, root grafts are actually one of the easiest grafts to do successfully, because it's just so it's an approach graft where you're basically making an incision into the tree, and then you're placing a seedling in where, like, this is what an approach graft is. Like you're making an incision, you're placing like a seedling or a branch, and then at that like cut point is where it will fuse. So when you're doing a root graft, you're doing an approach graft very low on the nibari or around the base of the tree, wherever you need a root, basically. And instead of like, you're not grafting with the intention to grow a branch, right? Your intention is grow roots. So you're going to be using the seedling stalk very close to the base of that taproot on the seedling, because you're trying to only grow like one root from that seedling to fuse onto the tree. And I mean, a lot of trees need root grafting. Just like trees don't grow perfectly. And if you want that perfect nibari, like, more than likely you're going to have to do a couple root grafts here and there. It's just like part of the game. And I do agree, like, more people should take up grafting and like get proficient at it, because like high level bonsai, like, it needs grafting from time to time. Like, you can make trees without ever grafting them. It's possible, but whenever you have a problem area, like maybe you want to branch in a spot and you just can't get a bud there, like, yeah, you just graft it in. Or you have a root that won't, or you need a root and like you don't have it, so you just graft it in. This kind of things. And I mean, I'll say, in my opinion, grafting is pretty easy to learn how to do, but to make a clean union is pretty difficult. Like, it takes good skill and practice. Only that, though.
Mm-hmm. And so, can you root graft any tree?
As far as I know, like, I've seen Shinpaku here in this nursery. I've been root grafted and separated, and I've seen red pine that has been root grafted. I've seen black pine that's been root grafted. I haven't seen white pine be root grafted, but I have a feeling it'd probably be just fine, because I've seen them air layered.
What about like deciduous trees, elms, things like that? Do people root graft?
Yeah, as far as I know, pretty much every deciduous can be root grafted. I think because it's an approach graft, I think like the key is that approach grafts work best with species that heal over well.
Right.
So for example, like Elaeagnus. I don't really think Elaeagnus is a good healer. I mean, they can heal in some cases, but I don't know how easy they are to graft. I've never tried, and I've never seen it done. So I have this feeling that because it's kind of like difficult to heal, it's difficult to get a graft to be accepted, because it's like it doesn't build that callus tissue so quickly to accept the graft.
And that's what I've noticed. I've noticed on a lot of species, it seems like sea hibiscus is one. It almost seems to heal, and it doesn't seem readily, it doesn't fuse easily, and it doesn't seem to like take approach grafts easily. It seems to like push out faster than it will fuse into itself. So
yeah, I think the quicker a tree is to form callus tissue and begin that healing, the more viable approach grafting is. So that's either approach grafting roots or like crepe myrtle, trident maple, Japanese maple. I mean, Shinpaku juniper is like approach grafted all the time. Needle juniper tosha is root grafted all the time. Sorry, I'm getting mixed up saying root grafted, meant approach grafted. But yeah.
I've also noticed you really got to sink at least like with ficus and stuff like that. I've had a hard time sinking them both deep enough so that, and finding something that will hold them tight enough so they don't push out.
Yeah.
I've used pins, I've used staples, and they just push right out of that.
I do think you have to go a little bit more than flush. Like if you have I'm just going to use easy numbers. If you have a scion for your approach graft that's like an inch thick, you're probably going to want the incision to be like an inch and a half deep.
Right.
So that the callus tissue can grow over the scion and like swallow it, so that it's like forced to fuse. And then as far as getting something to hold it in place, I mean, it all depends on like the tree and like the particular scenario, right? Because like sometimes just the positioning of where the graft is can make it kind of difficult to secure something. But I mean, generally, like maybe you put like a piece of rubber to like protect the bark, and then maybe you put like a chopstick and then just crank it down with a wire that it's tight. Or like some cases, you can put a piece of rubber and staple it. And like the little incision points from the staple, like they'll disappear with time, so it's no worry.
What about like a whatchamacallit, like a picture nail or like a trim nail or something like that?
I've seen people use those,
because I've used the little pins, and those don't.
Yeah, to be honest, I don't particularly like those like grafting pins with like that small terrible green rubber, and it's a very thin nail.
Yeah, it doesn't.
I don't.
Anything.
I would rather use like a push pin than one of those. Like, I just like, I don't know. I feel like it holds more secure.
I agree.
Yeah, I mean, on big approach grafts, like you can use a staple gun or like those like thick fencing staples that are kind of like maybe they're just called a fencing staple. But like, I mean, a thick staple or two on a big tree is like perfectly fine. It's just you got to get creative how to secure it, I think.
Right. Yeah, that's the issues I've run into, is those just really strong growth just pushing out of there. But
and like say for example, Kaide trident maple, it is kind of prone to like pushing out because it's a strong growing species. So like knowing that is kind of where you have to think like, okay, I know this tree is going to grow very strong and I know there's a good chance that it's going to push out. So like, I'm going to make my cut deep and I'm going to do my best to like secure this really tight. And I mean, that's basically the best you can do. Right.
Right. And just keep trying.
Yeah.
Cool.
And just to throw it out there for some of our listeners that might want an idea how to get good cutting like root graft stock, is that one of the things that I've heard and one of the techniques that I've used as well is when you take your cuttings, put your cuttings, if they're going to be root graft stock, particularly off the same tree helps, but within the same species as well, because you're cutting the foliage off of it.
Yeah.
But also stick your cuttings down the side of the container that you're trying to achieve roots on, so that the roots are literally forced to push one direction out, so that when you take that cutting out, then you're going to put it onto the tree that you're trying to graft it onto, your roots will be very directional off of that.
Right. Yeah, I think that's a pretty good idea. Like it's a nice like little extra step that you can take that will make the process a lot easier.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Especially if you let that cutting grow a little bit of a stronger root, and then that root will be thicker, but I think also it might be counterintuitive in some cases if like your cutting it's a little too like it's a little away from you on it, and if it starts to thicken before you have the chance to implant it, then that might be counterintuitive. But it's just a thought. That's something I've heard and have used myself, and it seems to work pretty fine.
Personally, I think like the best result for a root graft is going to be on a smaller size like piece of, I'm just going to call it a scion, like whatever scion stock you're using. If it's on the smaller size, it's going to be like just easier to do with a root graft. And I think like the thickening of the root will appear more natural. And then the cut, when you actually remove the stalk from the mother plant, like you won't have like such a visible scar in the future. And I think that's a little bit true with any type of graft though. Like your stalk and scion should always be kind of like appropriately matched by size.
Yeah.
Well,
I've noticed with some of the grafts that especially scion grafting, that it seems like the smaller the graft, I used to try to like, put the biggest size in there. And that would always, especially for cleft grafts, would always create a reverse taper area. So I've found, you got to really do a small branch and not bow that section out at all. One thing I wanted to ask you, on your approach grafts, do you ever scrape the underside? I usually leave them intact, and I haven't noticed any.
Yeah, I don't think you have to.
I don't think so.
Like, I think like you could maybe potentially get a quicker connection because you're exposing cambium on the scion, and then like it could connect to the cambium on the like whatever tree you are grafting. But I don't think it's necessary. I think like depending on like the tree, you could even be like damaging the scion and weakening it rather than like doing something that's beneficial.
That's what I've had happen, where I like cut too deep into it and it just didn't work out.
Yeah, so I don't think it's necessary.
Yeah, cool. Very cool.
Yep.
Nice.
So that kind of brings us towards the end of our show here. Before we wrap it up, in case y'all didn't catch that bonsai word of the week was netsugi. I know we went really long, but we got a lot of great information on that. I feel like that's a really important technique. But yeah, we're going to go to our shout outs really quick. Just so y'all know, y'all can go over to Little Things for Bonsai People and find us on Instagram. There's a very inactive Facebook page there, but give us some time. We're all bonsai people here. We have a lot of things going on.
It's growing season.
It is. It's blazing hot where I'm at, and I know Mike's even hotter. Yeah. But yeah, you can go over to underhillbonsai.com, go check out stuff that I got going on, underhillbonsaistore.com to go see what stock I have as far as pre-bonsai, wire, tools, soil. We make our own soil in a house here for the Southeast. We just got a whole bunch of willow pottery from South Africa. A lot of good pottery there, nice high quality stuff, mid to high quality. And then for Mike, you can go check out kitsunebonsai.com. Are you offering any online classes coming up soon?
No online. We do have a bunch of local classes at the Alliance for the Arts here, but we also have Laurent Dariu coming in next month. He's starting his U.S. tour here in Florida.
Super cool.
And so that's going to be pretty sweet. So most of our attention's kind of just gearing up towards that.
Yep.
And so yeah, that and the classes we're offering with the Alliance and private sessions. So
Yep.
no
And
online classes. Unfortunately, the online thing, when we were attempting to do it, we didn't have a huge wasn't a lot of people signing up for it. So we're shelving it until maybe like winter time again, and we'll revisit that.
Until the next pandemic.
Yeah, the next pandemic. That's what we need. Yeah.
But there also might be an opportunity for our patrons as far as online classes go. We've been teasing that for a little while here, but online classes will be in the pipeline eventually when it pertains to little things for bonsai people. So we'll get back to that later. But also, you had mentioned earlier for Laurent, he'll be with you and he'll be over here with me in Southeast Louisiana as well. That's going to be in October. We currently have for the people who are local enough, I know this is a international show. Everybody's from all over the world's listening to this, but anyone that's close enough to me, you can go over to Underhill Bonsai Store and you can go to workshops and sign up for the workshops that we have with Laurent. It's going to be the 5th and 6th of October. And then as far as other topics we need to hit with that.
Oh, Seth, you got to hit on Seth and his.
Yeah. I was going to say,
do
Seth,
your
where they can check out your work.
So like on Instagram, it's seth.nelson.bonsai. And on Facebook, it's Seth Nelson Bonsai, without the dots. It's the same content on both pages. And I've just been kind of, sharing my experience as an apprentice on those pages. I had an Instagram that had like 8 years of content, and then I lost it. So the Seth.Nelson bonsai Instagram page doesn't have all of my posts, all my content from the years that I've been here, but the Facebook page does, if that is something you're interested in.
Yeah.
But otherwise, it's just, it's updated pretty regularly.
Yeah, it's a great resource for the beginners out there and the intermediate people out there. There was a lot of things I picked up on, over the years, just reading his Facebook. And so definitely check it out. Yeah,
you guys go over there and check out his Instagram and his Facebook under the Seth Nelson, seth.nelson.bonsai on Instagram for sure. This is the future of bonsai. These are people that are learning in Japan now. So you need to keep an eye on them. They're going to have some really good stuff coming in the future. And does your Oyakata have any information online about his bonsai nursery? That's not just Japanese exclusive.
Yeah, there's a Aichian Bonsai website. It's in English. He doesn't really use social media. He has an account, but I don't think he's ever posted on it. So yeah, he's more private in that sense. He doesn't really share so much. But the Aichian website is available in English.
Can you spell Aichin out for the people who want to go look at it?
Yeah, it's AICHIEN.
Okay. Awesome. And that's .com, or is that
that's .com.
Okay.
No, it's .com.
All right. Yeah, y'all go check out Aichin. That sounds like a little cool thing to see there. I mean, I don't really see a lot of bonsai nurseries in Japan have websites or any information. It's usually pretty kept to themselves. But yeah, just wanted to say one more time, thanks to the patrons. If you're interested in becoming a patron, head over to patreon.com/little things for bonsai people and support the episode. Get a shout out at the beginning of each episode. And the list keeps getting longer and longer. You're going to make me stumble over more and more names, but we're all here for it. It's kind of a staple of the show right now. But anyway, but yeah, you guys, thanks for hanging out. Thanks, Seth, for telling us about bonsai apprenticeship and your experience.
Thank you both for thank you both for inviting me to do the podcast and actually getting time to do it with me.
We're gonna have you again if you're down for it. That was
cool. I'm down.
Yep.
I'm down.
Awesome. All right. Well,
go
get some sleep, man, and or is that
sleep for the week?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's 11:15 now, but I don't know. I'll probably be up for another 2 hours because that's just how I am.
Yeah, not me. Well, I can't say that. Sometimes I am, but I'm up at 4 every day. So
no, I can't do that.
Yeah, I'm crazy like that. So
yeah, that's weird, dude.
All right, guys. Well, I'm gonna go work in the garden and catch up some trees.
Yeah. Yeah. Until next time,
All right,
All
guys.
right.
y'all stay groovy. All right.